right now to the former Foreign and Defence Secretary, Sir Malcolm Rifkind, who kindly joins us. Good afternoon to you, Sir Malcolm.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Two big stories I want to talk to you about. First, with the Chagos Islands. Big questions about this deal, which was announced, quite bizarrely last month, I thought, by Keir Starmer, that we were going to basically give the Chagos Islands to the Mauritians, who were totally ad hoc to the Chinese, but we'd had a 100-year lease deal for the Diego Garcia military base that the US hold that would protect that base's future for the time being. But lots of outcry about this. We're told the Americans are in favour of it. Now we know that Donald Trump and his team not in favour of this deal. They don't want it to go ahead. And now there's some talk of him trying to rush this deal through. But we've got another little bit of an issue, is that the Mauritian has elected a new Prime Minister who's not very keen on the deal. First of all, should we be giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius? And secondly, is this a good deal for anyone apart from the Chinese?
Well, let me respond by what is the actual British interest. The British interest is not the Chagos Islands as such. Nobody lives on the Chagos Islands. They have no economic value that I'm aware of. What is important is the island, the one island of Diego Garcia, which has been a very, very important British naval base and which we've shared with the United States for many years. That was never recognized by Mauritius or by the international community. The deal that was negotiated, I have a lot of interest in. I have a lot of potential support for it, because in exchange for handing over these islands that have no economic value and nobody living on them, and they're of no interest to the UK, we were going to be given a 100-year guarantee of the future, and perhaps longer, but a minimum of 100 years, that the island of Diego Garcia would be recognized as being effectively British territory. And it's interesting, it wasn't just Britain that wanted to see this happen. There was a warm welcome from India. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, we're very worried about China. The fact is, India is the nearest neighbor to Diego Garcia. The Indians and the Chinese do not get on well with each other. The last thing India would have done would have been to welcome this proposal if it was going to help the Chinese interfere in that part of the world. So India was delighted that the presence of the base would be internationally recognized by Mauritius. Now, a lot's happened since then. I'm telling you where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I still think it's basically a good deal. But I agree with you.
But I don't understand. We don't need the Mauritian government to recognise the Diego. So they have no claim to this island whatsoever.
No, sorry, you're wrong.
They've never ruled it.
No, forgive me. Before you go on saying that, that is fundamentally wrong. The islands, including Diego Garcia, were administered as part of Mauritius until Mauritius became independent.
By the French.
At that time, the British government said, we're going to hold on to these islands. I happen to think that was a justifiable decision. I'm not criticizing that decision. But don't say nobody agrees that it's nothing to do with Mauritius. The International Court of Justice, rightly or wrongly, had to judge on this and ruled the opposite to what you're saying.
I know they ruled the opposite, but I bow to your greater knowledge of this, but the Mauritians have never owned this island. It is a vast distance away from Mauritius, but there's also the issue...
Well, they're nearer Mauritius than they are to the United Kingdom, let's put it that way.
Yeah, but that's not the basis on which island territories are controlled, is it?
But let me get
But the key thing is, you say it's of no value, no one is it, but we know it's of value because it's where huge number of flights were carried out by military operations.
Or are you being interviewed?
No, Malcolm, but a huge number of military operations were carried out from Diego Garcia by the US.
Come to your question.
But you're saying...
What do you want me to answer?
Because I'm asking why you're saying it has no value when we know it has value because of the use of that base at Diego Garcia during military operations.
Forgive me, if you listen to what I was saying, I said the island of Diego Garcia has always had value, and that is the one that has been negotiated with a 100-year guarantee. Now, let me add something that I have not said up till now, because your program correctly pointed out that we now have the likelihood of a Trump administration. The Biden administration, the United American government, indicated publicly their support for what the British government had negotiated. The then Mauritian government was in favour. Both Mauritius and America now have new governments.
Yep.
And the Prime Minister of Mauritius, the new one, is saying he has severe reservations for the quite opposite reasons. He doesn't want Diego Garcia to continue as a British base. He wants the island of Diego Garcia to also be part of Mauritius. So he's saying he may be opposed to this. He hasn't yet made up his mind. And the Trump people are saying, we too have severe reservations. Now, if that turns out to be true, if these reservations are now there, there is no benefit in going forward with this proposal.
No, indeed.
Because
do you think there's a likelihood, though, that the current Labour government here, Keir Starmer, can actually get this through before January the 20th and Donald Trump's
Well, they mustn't try and do it, just rush it through in that way. That would be very, very foolish. Yeah. The only judgment that needs to be made is, will this have the support from the United States government that it's had up till now, and has at this moment, because the Biden administration are continuing to support it. Now, if Trump is very hostile, we don't yet know. The trouble with Trump is, you get odd sound bites, and don't really know what his position is going to be.
Yeah, and someone who's an ally, someone who's an appointee, but you don't know whether they're speaking on his behalf.
Well, it's more than an ally. I mean, Mario Cuomo is the designated Secretary of State, and he's got reservations. So these things have to be addressed. And if the discussions that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's envoy, is having in the United States, they might reach agreement, they might not. If they don't reach agreement, that a Trump administration would be very severely critical. And if the new Mauritian government, for the opposite reasons, doesn't like the deal, better to drop it and continue as we were before.
It's going to be fascinating. Now, we're talking there about, this all comes from an International Criminal Court of Justice ruling some while ago. Let's talk about a more recent ruling from the International Criminal Court in relation to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, and also his former Foreign Minister as well, now sacked. But basically demanding, putting out an arrest warrant for him for alleged genocide in Gaza of the Palestinian people. The current Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has said he would have no choice under the terms as Britain as a signatory to the International Criminal Court to actually issue an arrest warrant, pass it on, to the authorities to deal with if Benjamin Netanyahu came onto British territory. We've seen a sort of different approach from Emmanuel Macron in France, although that seems to be sort of a little bit up in the air at the moment. Donald Trump has made it very clear that will not be the case for America. They're not a signatory to the court. Indeed, neither is Israel, actually. Should we issue an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu if he did step foot on British territory? Yes or no?
Well, I think, forgive me, I will not just say yes or no. I will give you a proper answer. I think that David Lammy is wrong. I think the British government do have a choice because the International Court of Justice is not a court that can enforce its judgments. It issues judgments. We try to respect them 99.9% of the time. Countries that are members do observe their rulings, and that is right and proper. But occasionally the circumstances are very, very different. And in my view, if you want my view, what the British government should be saying is, it frankly depends on why Netanyahu wants to come to the United Kingdom. If he wants to come because it's part of a serious negotiating process to try and bring peace in Gaza, to try and make progress in the war between Israel and the Palestinians at the moment in Gaza, then frankly that is infinitely more important. That we do not interfere with that process. And if for some reason these negotiations should take place in London, which they've got to take place somewhere, I would say that then justifies saying we will not apply.
What if he wanted to come here on a shopping trip?
Well, that's exactly the point I was going to make. If it was for reasons purely of his own personal convenience, frankly, we respect the International Court of Justice. We are a signatory. Yes, we do. You may not, but we do.
I don't know if I do now. I think they've been captured.
Well, that's a matter of your personal view, but you're interviewing me, not the other way around. So as far as I'm concerned, the International Court of Justice does a lot of good work. We support most of what it has done. Occasionally we disagree with them. On this issue, I think there would be cause if the pointed issue was a negotiation towards peace being frustrated because Netanyahu couldn't come.
Okay.
But if he's coming for other reasons that are of no great significance of that kind, he must realise that is the risk he runs.
Yeah, I would find it extraordinary if we were to hand over a democratically elected ally. And again, the ICC is only supposed to have jurisdiction over countries, by the way, who are signatories, but also, I'm sure, of course, you'll know, Sir Malcolm, countries where there couldn't be a possibility of any action being taken in their own country. And we know that we have a very independent judiciary in Israel. We know this because there's a former Prime Minister and President who were put in prison by that judiciary.
I'm not disagreeing with you on some of the points you've just made. I'm not defending. I don't think the warrant was necessary in the first place. I don't think it was justified.
But given that it has been.
Netanyahu or Gallant. But, very often courts, which we normally respect, issue judgments we don't terribly like. There was a precedent. It's a very important precedent that Britain was involved in, because during the time of the IRA troubles, the IRA had 3 personnel in Gibraltar who had been identified by SAS And they ended up being killed by the SAS, who suspected they were plotting to have a terrorist attack. It was taken to an international court, which found against the United Kingdom. We said, terribly sorry. You may have reached this verdict,
but we're not going to.
Our national security is at stake, and as far as we're concerned, this was justified behaviour.
Okay.
So there's an important precedent.
Very interesting. Sir Malcolm Rifkind, I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to this really interesting debate there. Former Foreign and Defence Secretary, thank you for that. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Should we hand over, if you're in a restaurant, hand over Benjamin Netanyahu if he came to our territory?
No, I don't think we should. I think we should. This is one where we turn around and say the court was wrong in issuing it. And we stand up as one of the permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations and say we are not going to implement that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely outrageous. I know I don't trust that court's judgment. I think virtually all these international bodies have been captured by.
Very much so.
Let's call it what it is: anti-Semitic feeling.
Yes.
It's not pro-Palestinian. It's anti-Semitic.
anti-Semitic.
The only country they ever seem to have any problem with is Israel. They're really not bothered by anyone else. It really is. I think it's so blatant now. It's embarrassing.